So basically, my team have been designing against crime since 1999, and we wanted to include inmates in the process of designing against crime, not just because they're creative people, but because actually we believe design education can make a difference. And so, you know, the first encounters is getting into Thameside. It was a long process, and we had to tell a lot of stories about what design could do. Basically, we aimed for prison industries, because ideas about innovation are very badly understood, and it was easier to get the funding and to get access into prison. We started working with colleagues at National Institute of Design in India, and so we planned to go into 2 prisons, a prison in the UK and one in Sabarmati Jail in India. And the idea was to help inmates understand their own creativity and design potential, and for us to understand really what we could teach and what design could do. And so the first step was to get the money and to get in. I won't bore you with that encounter, but really, 6 months of my life was lost visiting the Ministry of Justice. Then we sort of started the project, and you know, we had all these big ambitions about you know, introducing a new learning process, thinking through doing, which all of you sitting in this room know about. But the big idea and the big connection, the big encounter was, could we work with inmates to design a bag for another to keep them safe, which raises massive issues about empathy. And could we get them to understand the business case for design? And we did lots of things. We taught lots of different approaches. And to say it was rewarding would be an understatement, you know, to actually reach out to people, to get them to accept that you might have something to say. I think my accent helped. Actually made a massive difference to how I understand design. And so we started to generate new, what we call design thinking approaches for inmates, but that's not the encounter I really want to talk about. I want to talk about actually how those inmates that we work with changed over a period of 6 weeks. That we you know, to break the ice, to sort of make the connection, we drew on many participatory and theatre design activities and processes that you'll be familiar with. But the job was to get some of these guys who were really quite hard and really quite difficult to actually let us see themselves. And it took a while, but actually over a period of intensive making and working with inmates in a actually quite lovely studio, I have to say, we found that we could have an encounter that we didn't expect, which was a genuine exchange. You know, like by the end of the first week, that 10 inmates who hadn't used a sewing machine before and who hadn't engaged with design before actually created persona, journey maps, you know, numerous paper prototypes. But the big thing, the big encounter I think that happened between us was this simple thing that design does, which is there is no one way. The idea that you can experiment and fail and do it again actually was very, very special in terms of an exchange. And that made a real difference to us. So we had a number of prototypes developed that we will develop further into a social enterprise of anti-theft bag designs that design against crime made by inmates. And, you know, it's not an accident that we were trying to show restorative processes in action. But we weren't convinced, because the relationship at first was such a big encounter, we weren't sure whether it was just the people, the context, or whether something special would happen. So we repeated it again in India, and it seemed to work there. And actually the feedback from the inmates was all about how, for the first time, they're allowed to think for themselves. Because, you know, if you're in prison industries, you're sewing up somebody else's designs. You're doing something for money. And, you know, to introduce the idea that actually inmates are creative, that they have a lot to contribute, was, I think, you know, very important for our team to see it work, but also important for the inmates. So what's happened is that, you know, it's gone well. There's been lots of sort of small successes, but the biggest one is that we've managed to convince our students to come into prison with us, and we've established a volunteering scheme where we can take the inmates and the students together into places where they can have an exchange with the graduates as mentors for inmates. And the Ministry of Justice are now more interested. They were at the bottom, at the beginning. And so what we've learned from this encounter is that de-risk spaces actually are incredibly important, that providing a space, a physical encounter where ways of learning could be received without being threatening was actually what design can do. And I think that for the first time, people who didn't imagine they were creative were able to show all their creativity, all the things they'd done before in their cells, and to talk about those experiences in ways that actually were very moving. Obviously, repeating the project again and again as we've done has convinced us that, you know, if you create the right spaces and if you create the right opportunities, actually anyone can do anything. And towards the conclusion, I wanted to say that basically that Make Right has started to build a community of practice within the prison. Other activities that don't include us are continuing, and we're hoping to set up a Fab Lab on the grounds of the prison where returning citizens can make a difference. And I just wanted to tell you about 2 quick encounters. The first was with the staff, actually. I took 2 students in, they got jobs at the prison. I was amazed at Praz and Erica and the way they were able to do that. I was also amazed that the 2 guys, the older guys you see in the picture, actually are now radical reformers and want to work with design. And one of them's actually decided not to retire because this has given new meaning. And I just wanted to say that the next job I want to do is actually work with the staff, because those people who retire from prison die 2 years after retiring because they're in prison too, and that was a big encounter for us. But the best and the biggest one for me was that one of our inmates who tried to get on an Open University course, he couldn't quite get the OU, but he did get to do a qualification that he started, and that he didn't start off with the confidence, but after 6 weeks he thought he could do it. And if that's what design can do, then I'm glad I'm in design education. Thank you.
Thanks, Lorraine.